Giselle Fontaine confidently dismissed it as a graveyard for failed ambitions. She mocked it before 300 wealthy guests, smiling blindly at the failure she was so sure of. That cursed Dellwood Street corner had already swallowed 2 separate restaurants. A quiet cafe and her own failed project. A $1 million venture wiped out completely. Where others saw only a cursed lot, Caleb Harrington saw potential. He arrived with $40,000 in savings and his 6-year-old daughter, who clung to her stuffed bear, Biscuit, along with a simple pumpkin soup recipe left by his late wife. Giselle Fontaine saw only a dead end and walked away. She would spend years deeply regretting that blindness. Stick with me here. What happens when the underdog everyone wrote off suddenly becomes the one unexpected triumph that the town's most powerful woman can never forget? On the morning his quiet rise began, Caleb stood at a cramped kitchen counter barely wide enough for one. Frying 2 eggs in a broken pan he had been meaning to repair for 3 long months. His apartment was just a cheap second-floor rental inside a faded building that smelled of damp carpet and hissing old radiators. The dingy walls, yellowed by years of everyday struggle, felt like they were pressing in on him from every side. Those drafty windows were so thin. He could hear pigeons thumping onto the fire escape every morning, serving as a harsh alarm clock. He was 33 and had been completely jobless for 7 straight months. Yet he moved with the deliberate calm of a man who had already lost the one thing he feared losing most. And yet he was still standing. He cracked the eggs into the hot skillet and watched them settle, quietly stressing over the heavy rent due at the end of the week, and the cost of a new burner gasket needed for the small catering gig he had booked for Saturday. He kept his face completely blank because showing weakness was a luxury he just could not afford anymore. Lily suddenly appeared in the doorway, wearing one shoe and dragging her teddy bear by the ear. She was only 6 years old. She had sharp, dark eyes and her late mother's habit of asking questions that uncovered everything. She scrambled up onto her stool, carefully setting her stuffed bear on a folded towel right next to the salt. She watched her father cook with the quiet focus of a child who had grown up in busy kitchens. Finally, she asked, "Are you going to look at the new restaurant today, Dad?" He softly said he was. She digested that answer with the deep, serious focus she saved for things that truly mattered to her. "Does Mom know?" Caleb gently set the hot pan down before answering. He looked at his daughter, the bear on the towel, and the pale winter sunlight fighting through the glass above the sink. He whispered yes, believing she absolutely did. His wife, Maeve, had died 18 months ago in a terrible car accident on a dark Tuesday night in November. While driving back from a teaching workshop, she had faithfully attended every single semester for 4 years. She was just 31 years old. Let's think about this together. She taught Caleb that cooking was not about showing off wealth, but about keeping people close. She always said it, in whatever cramped, worn-out kitchen they happened to be renting at the time. Always steady, always completely precise. Her hands glided over the cutting board, with the grace of someone who saw the masterpiece, before she even started cooking. To her, food was just profit. To him, it was Maeve's slow, pure, absolute focus. She saw wasted time, but he saw the potential of pausing to adjust flavors. Before Maeve passed, Caleb ran vaulted. The owner saw dollar signs, but he saw culinary art. Fontaine Group's flagship, she saw profit, but he felt trapped. Elite magazine-featured dining, she saw prestige, but he saw hollow hype. Charging $60 for tiny bites, she saw high-end margins, but he saw a family's grocery budget. 4 years, she saw a star, but he saw a dead end. It ended when she tried forcing him to swap out premium high-quality key ingredients for cheap garbage. She saw profits, but he saw a recipe for failure. She assumed customers wouldn't notice. He saw a betrayal of trust. She saw insubordination. He saw a chef's duty and bluntly refused. She warned him he had no choice. She saw submission, but he saw freedom. He packed his knives, shaking hands with the only 2 cooks he respected. He marched into the freezing February air. She saw failure, but he felt no regret. Through the hard months, she saw a fool. He saw integrity. $22 online classes barely paid bills. She saw failure, but he saw a stepping stone. $40,000 saved from grueling labor. She saw pennies, but he saw his future. Let's trace the investment. After grieving Maeve, he checked 14 Dellwood. She'd see a joke. He read it 4 times. She'd see a dead end, but he had to see the space. Driving down Thursday morning, he kept it secret, knowing she and his friends would call him crazy. She saw risk, but he needed to evaluate the raw potential himself. He arrived alone at the 90-square-meter shell. She'd see a tomb. A gutted ground-floor shell in an old brick building. She'd see a wreck. Built in the early 1960s, she saw hopeless neglect. He saw a sturdy foundation. A front window cheaply patched with electrical tape. She saw ruin, but he saw character. Under nasty peeling yellow linoleum lay scuffed concrete. She saw trash, but he saw potential. The dingy yellowed walls were once white. She saw filth, but he saw fresh paint. A damp, dusty room. She smelled rot, but he smelled opportunity. A rusted drainpipe leaked a metallic stench. She saw plumbing failure, but he saw a fix. Aldrich Webb, the exhausted landlord. 70 years old in a faded canvas jacket, he looked used to crushing blind dreams. She'd agree, but Caleb saw a challenge. 2 startups failed here in 4 months. She saw a pattern, but he saw a blank slate. No security deposit refunds under any circumstances. She saw a trap, but he saw an investment. The neighborhood had a terrible reputation. She saw a slum, but he saw hungry, loyal locals. Webb stepped aside. She'd see a miserable closet, but he walked his future kitchen. He paced the floor. She saw ruins. He felt structural strength. Stomping to test the subfloor, measuring the kitchen corridor. She saw tight space, but he saw efficiency. Mapping out stoves, cold storage, and prep tables. She saw empty space, but he saw service lines. He suddenly stopped at the far wall. A jagged crack in the broken plaster let in a brilliant ray of afternoon sunshine that sliced across dirty concrete. She saw a mess. He saw a stage. He stood still there. She saw failure. He saw hope. He remembered Maeve, recalling a freezing, tiny basement apartment in the Northeast. She'd see misery, but he saw their warmest winter. A dark hole with 0 sunlight and a useless landlord. She'd see ruin, but they saw home. Maeve knew what we know. The absolute worst spaces hide the brightest light. Let's look closer. Where she saw failure, he saw potential. Gazing at the cracked floor, others saw a hopeless ruin. Caleb saw his perfect canvas. Underneath the filthy grime, she'd see trash. He saw incredible bones. He locked down the 18-month lease without a single doubt. Owen called 40 minutes later, completely convinced Caleb had lost his mind taking on this ruin. That evening, Charlotte Voss showed up. She analyzed his tiny startup budget with the cold, sharp precision of a seasoned professional. She shook her head at the risk, yet offered 3 months of free accounting. She made the offer because watching him fail simply wasn't an option. That very night, he officially named his new venture Maeve's Corner. Sitting right at the kitchen table while Lily ate her cereal opposite him. She clapped her hands, showing an absolute, unwavering belief in his crazy gamble. Owen texted back a short reply, choosing to drink alone and doubt the vision. Caleb saw the full potential of his dream long before signing any papers. She'd see a basic diner. He envisioned a cozy seasonal escape. 1 daily chalkboard special, with plates priced from $18 to $22. No pretentious wine lists or rigid courses, and absolutely 0 corporate theater. A complete rebellion against everything he hated about Fontaine's rigid dining philosophy. He'd source everything from 3 local farms and a trusted, lifelong fishmonger. Every broth made from scratch. Every autumn brought his legendary pumpkin soup. Never changing that perfect recipe by even a single pinch. Weeks of grueling renovation, scraping away the decay to build his dream. 5 months of exhausting sweat on weekends while teaching culinary workshops all day. Here is where it gets interesting. Caleb found hidden papers stuffed under rotting floorboards. He pulled them from the damp dirt, brushed them off, and tossed them onto his plywood desk. He casually leafed through those first few stained pages. He instantly recognized the Fontaine Dining Group letterhead. He tossed the envelope aside without reading another single word. He went right back to painting, completely blind to the potential he'd unearthed. He would obsess over it soon enough. Meanwhile, mid-October brought the culinary awards at the Grand Hotel. Picture high ceilings and tables draped in expensive cream linen. This was the ultimate annual powerhouse gathering for the local restaurant scene. It was packed with elite restaurateurs, investors, and food writers. Plus local politicians eager to bask in all that shiny culinary prestige. Fontaine Dining Group had bought up 3 of the night's biggest award categories, flexing their power for 5 straight years. Giselle Fontaine delivered an arrogant keynote before the ceremony even started. At 40 years old, she wore a sleek black dress and expensive gold earrings. She glided across the stage with the smug, unhurried certainty of a woman who had never ever been the weakest player in any room she entered. Over 12 years, she built a massive restaurant empire from one tiny French bistro into a 12-property monopoly dominating the entire eastern half of the state. Yet she never actually ate in her own establishments. She proudly saw that cold, detached emptiness as extreme discipline. What do you and I see here? A CEO boasting about avoiding failure, blind to the quiet potential about to crush her. Halfway through, she paused to lecture the room on the failures that cost her the most. She called out Dellwood Corner by name. She claimed her corporate group wasted millions there. 3 years ago they quit, not because her massive empire lacked a grand vision, but because she believed some dead ground could never grow anything of value. To her, the spot was a black hole that swallowed cash and returned nothing. Then she dropped the insult Caleb would remember long after the night was over. That entire block is a graveyard for broken dreams. It stands as proof that some real estate just isn't worth saving. Some locations are just for losers with nowhere else to go. The wealthy crowd clapped politely, a few chuckling at the cheap insult. But you and I need to watch those back tables. Caleb sat by the service doors. An old kitchen buddy had sneaked him in as a guest for a free meal. He only came for the food. Otherwise, he was eating alone in his raw, completely gutted storefront. He sat frozen in his seat, listening to Giselle's brutal takedown of the exact spot where he saw potential, risking his last dime. He stared at his rough hands. 5 long months of tearing out rotten floorboards, hanging heavy drywall, sealing drafty windows, hauling old furniture, and carefully seasoning a stack of old cast iron, salvaged piece by piece from a cheap South Side junkyard. He studied his palms, gave a quiet nod to the empty air, and walked out before dessert. Later, walking to her luxury car, Giselle took a call from Marcus. She demanded updates on buying up that failed Dellwood Corner. Her plan to swallow every worthless retail space on that street and flip the block into a luxury dining chain under the Fontaine 11 brand. Marcus broke the bad news. Some local independent guy had just signed an 18-month lease for Unit 14. Giselle stopped cold. She demanded a name. Marcus replied, Caleb Harrington. 3 heavy seconds of dead silence followed. She knew that exact name. The talented head chef she had personally fired 2 years ago. The chef who refused her cheap ingredients on principle. You and I know potential always begins with a stand. She simply sneered, he will be gone in 6 months. She didn't sound angry. Just the cold, smug tone of a CEO declaring what she saw as an absolute certainty. Maeve's Corner opened early one chilly Saturday in November. No flashy press, no expensive corporate launch parties. Just a simple chalkboard resting on the sidewalk, the daily menu written in Caleb's neat handwriting. A rich pot of pumpkin soup simmering on the back stove since 9 a.m. Little Lily stood by the host stand holding a stuffed dog in her lap, clutching a handmade cardboard sign she absolutely insisted on taping to the front window. In her messy 6-year-old handwriting it read, "Today's special made with love." Caleb just stared at it. He took a long moment, smiled, and taped it to the glass himself, leaving every crooked letter exactly as it was. 11 customers walked in on that first day. Mostly curious locals drawn in by the incredible aroma and the rare sight of new life on a doomed block. We know potential always finds a way. Others saw a dying joint. He saw a future when Charlotte Voss quietly ate her soup. Setting her spoon down, she finally spoke. This is something I did not know I was missing. Then came Owen, who finally caved in, agreeing to work 3 unpaid lunch shifts weekly for that very first month. Just standing in the back, pretending to fix the exhaust hood. Giselle saw a failing diner. He saw a launch pad with 20 daily guests. She mocked those slow numbers. He knew they matched his first-month budget. He tracked every single dime in a cheap red paper notebook, writing it all out, just like Charlotte taught him. She bypassed the struggle. He knew manual math is where true growth happens. He logged every vendor bill, every single cover, every half-eaten plate, every bit of kitchen praise, and every brutal repair bill. Then Aldrich Webb walked in on day 10, a quiet Tuesday around 12:30. He grabbed a window seat, bought the lunch special, paid cash silently and walked out. But he showed up again the next morning, and the next. By the time week 2 wrapped, he had dined there 7 times. They never spoke about it, just a silent mutual respect building between them. But the equipment that pushed Caleb to the absolute brink was not the faulty stove or the nightmare of running a kitchen with barely 2 cooks. It was the dish machine, which failed entirely on day 23, right in the middle of a packed Saturday dinner rush. Fixing it cost $420, drained straight from his emergency fund. To survive the hit, he sold the absolute last valuable thing he still owned: a beat-up stainless steel watch with a scratched face. An old wedding gift, engraved on the back in Maeve's handwriting. He pawned it that Monday morning and hit the kitchen stoves before 11. He never told a single soul. Stick with me here. By month 2, the cafe won over steady neighborhood working families. Retired couples filling tables every single weekday morning. A few local professionals who made it their regular spot. A small food blogger even praised that pumpkin soup in an article about neighborhood dining, which sparked another modest little wave of curious diners. To her failing, to him that daily revenue was rock solid. She wanted fast money. He knew consistency was the real marker of success in month 2. And that quiet survival was enough to ping Fontaine Dining Group's corporate radar. A suit named Marcus walked in on Thursday afternoon. Dressed too sharp for the room, ordering a coffee he ignored. 5 minutes later, he slid a formal contract across. An offer to buy out his remaining lease for $120,000. She expected him to fold. Caleb smiled gently and passed. Marcus returned Monday, bumping the buyout to $180,000. Caleb smiled and rejected him again. Both conversations were totally polite and clear. 2 days later, Giselle herself rang the kitchen phone directly. Her tone was perfectly steady. You and I know that tone, the slick voice of a predator who has negotiated enough to bury any real emotion. Success is often hidden. She claimed his shop was a dead end, offering a quick way out. Caleb gripped the phone, watching young Lily sketch at a corner prep table. She drew a dog with giant ears, completely lost in her own creative world. He answered confidently, "Thanks, but I don't need a way out." But then came the next week. During the chaotic Friday lunch rush, a health inspector marched in. She saw doom, he saw a test. The forced 2-hour shutdown during the rush cost Caleb dearly. He lost critical lunch money, leaving a packed dining room suddenly quiet and empty. But the inspector found absolutely nothing wrong. Every counter was spotless, logs were updated, and every bin was neatly labeled. Caleb ran tight kitchens. He held this struggling neighborhood joint to the standard of a 3-star restaurant. With the doors open again, Owen whispered, "That inspection was no accident." Caleb already knew that ugly truth. But without real proof, suspicions do not mean a thing. That night, Charlotte handed him a terrifying, detailed financial forecast. If this corporate pressure continued, they would run out of cash in 2.5 months. She shared the terrible news calmly. Her reading glasses lay next to the open notebook on the table. Caleb thanked her, sitting alone with the heavy reality of it all. But his mind soon turned to the envelope hidden safely away. Late that night, entirely alone, he pulled it out to read every single word. Hidden among old blueprints was a secret lease deal between the massive Fontaine Dining Group and Aldrich Webb, signed 3 years ago. The legal language was dense, but the hidden truth was crystal clear. The giant corporation had paid Webb a massive upfront fee. They falsely recorded it on paper as a consulting fee. It secured a shady exclusivity deal, strictly blocking him from renting Unit 14 to anyone. Any competing restaurant or food business for a solid 3 years. It lacked formal signatures, but Giselle's initials sat proudly in the margins of the official Fontaine letterhead. If they pushed this, Caleb's entire lease was completely dead. But look closer with me. If the city board saw this, it proved highly illegal trade suppression. The giant corporation never officially filed the document. It sat as a forgotten draft hidden under dusty floorboards for 3 long years. This meant it was a loaded weapon they simply could not fire, without triggering the exact legal disaster they desperately wanted to avoid. Caleb slowly folded the paper, slipped it away, and slid the envelope back into his drawer. For the first time since Marcus brought that briefcase, Caleb saw his real underdog advantage. He finally recognized his own power on the board. Diana Ashworth walked in on a quiet Wednesday during the third month. No reservation and zero obvious reason to be near this quiet, underestimated neighborhood. She was a small woman in her early 60s, wearing a simple linen coat, with low shoes, short silver hair, and the completely calm vibe of someone accustomed to letting the truth reveal itself. You and I know that quiet power. She chose a quiet corner table right next to the window, ordering the rich pumpkin soup and the fresh trout with greens. Sipping house water, eating quietly without once checking her phone or saying a single word. She would see only a failing dead afternoon. But he saw potential, serving tables himself while Owen ran the kitchen. He refilled her water once. She saw neglect. He saw quiet respect. Finishing her soup, she asked how long he had made it, seeing an outdated dish where he saw legacy. He told her, 11 years, but the recipe wasn't mine to claim. She simply asked who created it. He shared Maeve's story. She saw a stubborn refusal to change, but he saw a perfected balance of cream and stock, unchanged since Maeve was 24. As his wife always said, once you find something that works for people, you do not change it without a reason. The woman listened quietly, staring down into a bowl she now saw differently. She took no notes, asking one final question to find the real story. Was his wife still cooking? He quietly answered no. He gently explained that his wife had been gone for 18 months. Diana Ashworth thanked him for lunch, paid in cash, left a standard tip, and walked right out. He had no idea of her potential power until exactly 3 weeks later. A stunning review dropped in the Meridian Fork, the area's oldest and most respected food guide. It spread far beyond Ashford, forcing industry snobs who saw failure to recognize the restaurant's true potential. Diana Ashworth gave Maeve's place. She wrote 4 lines of technical praise, focusing the rest on the soul others called a failure. She wrote that this humble spot never tried to impress. It simply fed people with purpose in the oldest, truest sense of the word. Pure attention, absolutely no flashy performance. Her final sentence hit hard. Sometimes you do not need a meal that shows off, but a room where someone cooks like it actually matters. The turnaround was incredibly fast. Within 72 hours, reservations were completely booked solid for the next 2 weekends. Crowds exploded so much that Caleb had to start a daily waiting list. Corporate CEO Giselle Fontaine read that review in her office Friday morning, her coffee turning completely cold. She read every word twice. She ordered Marcus to investigate if Ashworth had any personal or professional ties to Harrington. Marcus reported back fast, "None that I can find." That clean reality shook her far more than any corrupt tie would have. Late that night, long after the kitchen finally closed and Lily had crashed out on the small prep room couch, with Biscuit tucked safely beside her, Caleb sat alone at the window table, staring at the printed review Charlotte left behind. Reading slowly, he absorbed every single word, completely stopping when he reached that final sentence. He sat in the quiet room for a long time, holding on to its potential. Pressing his hands flat on the review, he wept silently without moving a muscle. It was that quiet, overwhelming sob that happens when you cannot hold it back. His first tears since Maeve's funeral, he had no idea what finally broke loose inside. That last line sounded exactly like something Maeve would say in a hot, windowless kitchen. Tasting a pot of soup, nodding slowly, and deciding it was finally perfect. Exactly 2 weeks after the article, a flashy rival pop-up opened right across the street, filling a storefront empty since last spring. It appeared completely without warning, offering slick ads and totally free food for the first 7 days. It was run by a trendy young chef with millions of followers who had never, we see right through him. He never had any real interest in the Dellwood community before. She saw a gimmick, he saw genius. She called the free week desperate. He saw a flood of future loyalists. We know success brings vultures. When a smear post questioned their food sourcing, she saw ruin, but he saw an opportunity. She saw a fraud. They claimed Caleb lacked the proper legal credentials to run a food business. To her, their fame was fake. They claimed he lied about ingredient quality. She saw a convincing takedown. He saw cheap jargon designed to deceive readers. She saw ruin. The rumor spread. Owen traced the digital footprint to a commercial relay. She saw a perfect cover-up. He saw a coordinated attack. He could not prove it. She saw doubts creeping in as regulars began questioning Caleb. Some even brought physical printouts. He calmly answered every question, showing off supplier invoices, showing logs and records, never making anyone feel bad for asking. Some stayed, but others vanished. She saw ruin, he saw resilience. Reservations plunged by nearly a third. She saw a sinking ship. Charlotte updated their grim forecast, bringing the notebook into the kitchen before morning service. She left it open on the pass, silently predicting their end. 2 months of cash remained. She saw bankruptcy, he saw runway. Caleb watched Lily sleep peacefully with Biscuit. She saw a failing father, he saw his ultimate motivation. He could take the $180,000 and surrender. He could shut down, secure their future, and find another kitchen. She saw safety, he saw defeat. Lily would never want for anything. She saw security. She expected him to fold here. He sat with the thought, letting his true resolve take solid shape. He remembered quitting Vaulted and surrendering his keys. She saw a quitter, he saw freedom. Maeve sat at the table with her tea. Others saw defeat, she saw his potential. Looking right at him with that unshakable belief she brought to everything that truly mattered. She only asked if he was right. He knew he was. She replied, "Then there is nothing to regret." Seeing his path forward, he stood up, walked to the kitchen, and opened the drawer. Next morning he found Aldrich Webb carrying the envelope she thought would never surface. Webb brought him inside, cleared a chair, and silently poured coffee from a stovetop pot. Caleb set the documents down, waiting patiently as Webb read through them. Webb studied the pages cautiously. She thought this past was buried, but he brought it to light. Finishing the stack, he set them down and stared blankly at the wall. He finally admitted they called it a simple consulting retainer. He confessed he never read the full addendum when he signed the papers. Look, he wasn't a dishonest man, and he didn't pretend to be one. He was just an older man handed complex jargon and a plausible story, never thinking to dig deeper. Here is where you and I see things shift. He agreed to testify that the clause hid its true legal impact. He confirmed Caleb's lease was fully valid. She saw an eviction, he saw a future. He stated this without flinching, then poured them both more coffee. They sat in that quiet back office for several minutes, finding strength in the silence. That exact same evening, Diana. Ashworth called Caleb, expecting surrender. Caleb heard opportunity. She thought her smear campaign was fatal. His allies immediately spotted the fake forum posts, turning threat into ammunition. Diana refused to hold back. 22 years of journalism gave her the eye to instantly tell the difference between a hopeless, failing business and a rising local restaurant attacked by a powerful, greedy competitor. Diana asked him to speak on the record, and he fearlessly agreed. Charlotte, Owen, Caleb, Webb, and Diana gathered in the dark kitchen to map their comeback. Under harsh lights, they pulled up chairs, transforming a desperate crisis into a growth strategy. Charlotte calculated the risks, looking for openings. Owen traced the smear campaign, turning their rival's trap into a winning weapon. Webb explained the legal documents that would free them. Diana sat quietly, recording every detail of their upcoming victory. By midnight, their massive comeback plan was fully alive. Webb's lawyer would submit a sworn affidavit to the conduct board, smashing Giselle's corrupt, restrictive monopoly deal. Diana was ready to publish her massive expose. Caleb would host a community night, proving their local diner was here to grow, not fade away. Just past 11 p.m. as they plotted their ultimate victory. Caleb's phone lit up with an anonymous text offering unexpected hope. It was a leaked email from Marcus to Giselle, plotting their total destruction. The text laid out the dirty sabotage aimed at killing Maeve's corner. Fake health reports, blocked permits, and vicious, coordinated online smear campaigns. Marcus used one chilling word to describe his corporate hit. His goal, which he claimed was finished, was to, quote, neutralize them. We might wonder who sent this leak, but they stayed completely hidden. Caleb passed the device to Charlotte, who instantly secured a backup copy. Slipping the phone away, Caleb smiled at his team, saying, "We have everything we need." Diana's big article in the Meridian Fork never named Giselle's empire directly. Honestly, she didn't even have to. She exposed a blatant history of heavy regulatory sabotage, cruel, coordinated online smear campaign, and a monopoly tactic meant to break a diner that proudly refused to sell out. All happening on their street, right after they got a glowing local food review. The headline asked, Who is truly terrified of Maeve's corner? Dropping on Thursday, 4 major news outlets picked up their story by Monday morning. Ashford's Commercial Conduct Board finally took action, launching a rapid investigation the very next week, triggered by a crushing lawsuit from Webb's lawyer, his statement plus those old contracts hidden deep beneath the floorboards, proving Giselle's restrictive lease was built entirely on a foundation of deliberate lies. The legal paperwork framed the entire situation as illegal corporate bullying. It was blatant that everyone in the neighborhood saw Giselle's fake success for what it was, complete failure. Let's watch her fall. Giselle called Caleb at 7 a.m. as her world shattered. Her arrogant tone was completely gone. That icy confidence she once projected was replaced by desperate, heavy, and visible panic. A forced calm from a woman realizing she was the real failure. She saw a dying business, but he knew how strong a community-backed kitchen could really be. Suddenly, the CEO wanted to settle and sweep this failure away. Offering over $180,000, she desperately repeated the word settlement. She sneered that his restaurant was a hopeless failure, destined to drain his cash forever. To her, a corporate buyout was his only escape from total bankruptcy. But Caleb just stood there, resting his hand on the kitchen cooler. Looking through the small window, he saw the potential waiting in his dining room. He watched Owen carefully prepping tables, folding napkins for the upcoming lunch service, aligning the shakers with a deep, hidden devotion that she could never value. Caleb waited for her speech to finish, then said, "I only want one settlement. I want to serve my community today, tomorrow, and next year. I do not need anything more than that." He spoke with calm focus, plating his words as precisely as a signature dish. A long, heavy silence stretched across the line. He heard her slow exhale. It did not sound confident, but like her corporate shield was finally cracking. The call went silent. That afternoon, Marcus resigned from Fontaine. His email claimed personal reasons, but nobody in that sinking empire believed him. Just 2 days later, Giselle's PR team scrambled to issue a statement denying any link to the anonymous online attacks. They rejected rumors of smear campaigns and shady leasing tricks on the Dellwood block. The carefully crafted corporate text was legally safe but completely and utterly unconvincing. To be honest, anyone who read Diana's investigative article saw right through them. 2 weeks later, Maeve's Corner hosted a massive community night on a busy Friday. Without spending a dime, word of mouth spread quickly through the neighborhood. It reached Charlotte's loyal network and the regular guests who backed them from day one. Within the first hour, every single table was packed. Lily stood proudly at the entrance in a yellow sweater, handing out simple paper menus. She had printed them, using the small restaurant's only desktop computer. A hand-drawn soup bowl decorated the corner, because she believed every good menu needed a visual touch. Webb arrived early, securing a cozy spot right near the kitchen window. He happily ordered the warm pumpkin soup and braised short ribs, savoring every single bite very slowly. Looking around, he smiled with the satisfaction of a man who saw immense potential where others only saw failure. Late that evening, when the busy room had finally thinned down to just a few guests, a quiet woman walked inside and waited patiently near the front door. She was in her mid-30s, dressed simply, and introduced herself as Jessica Brandt. She admitted she had spent 4 long years working corporate operations for Fontaine. They fired her for refusing to sign off on a fake quality certification. She had read Diana's brave article. She simply felt the right time had finally come to speak out. She did not ask for a table or expect any special treatment. Standing in the doorway, she bravely handed over the truth they needed to win. She quietly mentioned hearing great things about their soup. Caleb personally brought her a piping hot bowl. He set it down simply, refilled her water, and stepped back to let her enjoy it. She saw a lost cause, but he knew true success hides where people seek connection over validation. She saw a failing diner, he saw a completely genuine refuge. She saw loss, he saw victory, leaving her in peace. 3 months later, the Ashford Conduct Board's investigation dragged on. She saw ruin, he saw potential. Fontaine paused their aggressive Dellwood takeover. She saw failure, he saw a future. Talk of Fontaine 11 vanished. She saw humiliation, but he saw quiet progress. Giselle Fontaine stayed chief executive. She saw a brave face, he saw desperate survival. Her confidence faded. She saw defeat. He saw a breakthrough. She saw public shame in her failure, while he saw the potential for humility. She saw a loser diner, but he saw 6 straight weeks of packed tables. She saw another cheap hire. He saw Dex, the key to their growth. She saw a quiet drudge, but he saw a hustler who quickly mastered the menu. She saw chaotic kitchen labor. He saw a well-trained cook finding a perfect rhythm. She saw constant financial struggle, but he saw a truly sustainable future. She saw a worthless partnership, but he saw Owen's formal deal over Tuesday soup. She saw cheap, exhausting sweat equity. He saw a highly valuable 20% stake. She saw a ridiculous, worthless perk. He saw the true value of hospitality. She saw petty contract squabbles. He saw a crucial foundation Charlotte quietly approved. She saw a missed deadline, but he saw Charlotte arrive that Thursday. She saw a messy old ledger. He saw a record of their true survival. She saw bleak, hopeless numbers. He saw the potential inside those financial summaries. She saw a microscopic detail. He saw a massive, life-changing shift. She saw a tiny profit, but he saw expenses beaten. She saw an unimpressive nod. He saw a silent, monumental validation of success. She saw a fluke. He saw the magnificent dawn of an unlikely victory. She saw minor gratitude. He saw a sacred milestone tucked safely in his pocket. She saw boredom. He saw peace. She saw a tired owner. He saw a founder perfecting his future late at night. She saw depressing, lonely shadows. He saw the sacred focus of a quiet, illuminated workspace. She saw mindless chore work. He saw the deliberate design of tomorrow. She saw noisy city distractions. He saw the beautiful heartbeat of a thriving neighborhood. She saw chaotic street noise. He saw a beautiful late-night melody. She saw a rundown district, but he saw a community pushing forward. She saw exhausting, loud disruptions. He found deep comfort in these hard-earned sounds. She saw an insignificant life. He saw proof that he truly belonged right here. She saw an obligation. He saw Lily, his ultimate motivation. She saw a sad makeshift bed. He saw Lily sleeping peacefully. She saw exhausting, endless struggles. He saw the foundation of a real home. She saw a vulnerable, broken child. He saw slow, perfect breathing and pure peace. She saw a cheap, embarrassing cardboard sign. He saw a priceless masterpiece. She saw a useless, childish scrap. He saw a legacy he carefully protected and preserved. She saw a curling, outdated nuisance. He saw a constant, shining beacon of hope. She saw a gimmick. He saw love. She saw a cramped doorway. He saw the gateway to his future. She saw failure, while he saw ultimate potential. Watch the streetlight hit the glass. Know real victory is quiet. She saw a dead end, but he kept on cooking. She saw a rundown diner. Nobody called Maeve's Corner Ashford's finest spot. They didn't need to. He knew real success wasn't built for flashy awards. She saw a boring trap. He saw a sanctuary where locals returned week after week for simple comfort. She saw mindless routine. He knew they returned simply because it felt right. She believed in cheap marketing. He knew real loyalty is impossible to fake. She wanted a theatrical, arrogant chef. He wanted someone who cooked from the heart. She saw a low-profit transaction. He saw a genuine act of care for the guests. She hated the modest decor. He knew a cozy dining room sealed the magic. Meanwhile, Giselle Fontaine built her massive empire on cold strategy, seeing failure in anything small. She completely failed to grasp that human touch. She only cared about flashy impressions. For years, she mistook flashy hype for true connection. Sitting in too many fancy boardrooms made her completely blind to what really mattered. But Caleb Harrington, he saw the true potential here years ago. She saw a sad, windowless basement kitchen. He watched his wife patiently perfecting a soup. She tasted it, nodded slowly, and whispered, "Now this will keep someone going." He turned off the lights, locked up, and carried his sleeping daughter to the car. With her toy tucked away, he felt the cold city buzzing around their small, hidden triumph. She saw an endless, exhausting cycle. He saw a fresh start at 11 tomorrow. Soup is hot by 10. You and I know that's enough.